Started. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's presentation, part of our Kirk 2022 webinar series. Today's title is Developing and Tracking Institutional Waste Goals. My name is Margaret Bounds. I'm the Director of Sustainability at Connecticut College, and I'm a board member of Kirk, the College and University Recycling Coalition. Thanks for joining us again, and I'll be your moderator today for the webinar. For those of you who aren't familiar with Kirk, we're a member-based organization working to grow collegiate recycling and waste reduction efforts by fostering technical information exchange, educational support, networking opportunities between staff, faculty, and student leaders implementing diversion programs. Today's session is part of our free webinar series, which is designed to highlight innovative campus programs and provide trends and perspectives on a broad range of operational and educational topics related to collegiate recycling and sustainable materials management. We have a few housekeeping notes to go over. If you have problems with your audio or video during the webinar, you can visit Zoom's support center at support.zoom.us. To avoid background noise, we've placed all but our panelists' lines on mute. We encourage you to submit questions using the Q&A section. And if you want to chat with other attendees, feel free to use the chat box for that. We will try to get to as many of the questions in the Q&A box as possible. We're trying to leave an extended Q&A period for this session because we know this will probably generate a lot of good conversation. Copies of today's presentation slides will be available to download and a recording available to stream within the next day or two from the Kirk website, kirk3r.org, which I believe we will be sharing in the chat shortly. So I want to thank our sponsor, True, for their support of the webinar series, and we'll be hearing from their representative during the panel, and you'll also be free to ask them questions during our Q&A period. Right, so I want to introduce our topic and our panel for today. We are going to be talking about goal setting. How do you decide what your waste goal should be? Are you going for zero waste, for waste reduction? Something that I think we've all struggled a little bit with, and how do you go through the process of setting that goal, then tracking it and communicating how you're doing. So we've got a really great panel to dive into some of those issues. I'm going to introduce them all now, unlike some of our typical Kirk webinars where we just hear from a couple folks. We're going to have four panelists, well, four institutions represented with 5 panelists. And like I said, you can submit questions to the Q&A at any time for any of the panelists. So first up, I am pleased to introduce Emma Bodzik from the Georgia Institute of Technology. Emma is the Zero Waste Project Manager in the Office of Solid Waste Management and Recycling, where she oversees the solid waste contract, recycling, and compost efforts. Before joining Georgia Tech, Emma worked at the Capita Environmental Services, managing the waste and recycling programs for commercial properties, malls, and office buildings. Emma is an Atlanta Sustainability Ambassador and recently completed a master's in sustainable energy and environmental management. So welcome. Our next panelist is Mina Weyland, also from Georgia Tech. He is their Senior Sustainability Project Manager, overseeing strategic projects related to sustainable operations, including the efficient management of energy, water, and waste through the utilization in the built environment. His previous work was also focused on sustainability in public and private sectors, working first for the University of South Carolina and later at AGCO. Next up, we've got Sue Fassler, who is the Director of Sustainable Operations at the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry. In this role, she directly manages and advocates for the custodial and grounds divisions and leads the college's Office of Sustainability. She also sits on the board of the Tug Hill Tomorrow Land Trust and co-chairs the United University Professions Environmental Issues and Advocacy Committee. And next we've got Danner Dowd Martin, who is the director of the Haas Campus Sustainability, working to make sure that the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley is operating in the most sustainable way as an organization. In 2018, Danner was the staff lead for the Zero Waste Initiative for Connie and Kevin Chu Hall. Designed for LEED Platinum and WELL certifications, Chu Hall is also the first business school building to attain a true zero waste certification. And finally, last but not least, we have Celeste Mcnichol, the Director of Client Solutions for True Zero Waste Certification with the USGBC. True certification aims to support facilities and businesses in achieving their zero waste goals by providing a clear path to certification using a points-based rating system and educational tools such as the True Advisor program. Celeste has a background in architecture and is a True Advisor, Lead AP, and Lead Green Rater. She serves on the board of NYSAR3 and the Brooklyn Solid Waste Advisory Board and is a certified master composter and permaculture designer. So we've got a great panel for you, and I'm going to turn it over to Emma and Mina to kick us off.
Okay, thanks, Margaret. So we are, my name is Mina Weyland. I'm with Georgia Tech, and I'm here with Emma, as Margaret just introduced. Our title of our presentation is Pathway to Zero Waste. And we're going to talk a little bit about where we are at Tech with our zero waste goal and some of the steps we've taken to advance it. Just for those of you who don't know Georgia Tech, we're located in Midtown Atlanta. We're a large research institute right here in the city, and we have kind of an urban environment for our buildings and our spaces. So we do have a zero waste goal. It is tied more to our current strategic plan for the Institute, which came from the President's office. So all the plan and timeline is tied to that, but zero waste is a part of that. So we're looking at about a 10-year goal to achieve zero waste for the campus operations. Our major steps in that have been the contracting of Capita Consultant Group, which we did in 2020, and a one-year study to develop what we call the Materials Management Conservation Plan. They looked at all the generator groups on campus, dining, athletics, housing, all our lab spaces, to look at ways to improve diversion, optimize our current systems, and make kind of recommendations. You can see one of those recommendations here. This was a great tool that they developed for us to showcase in one slide what our current streams are, where they're going on and off campus. This has been really handy in sharing with leadership, as well as some of our outside stakeholders. And in terms of recommendations, we've shared a slide. They have very detailed recommendations that we're pursuing to get to zero waste. I'm just going to showcase a couple of them, and then Emma's going to get into some of the data we're using. But at a high level, they looked at upstream, our current operations, and then downstream as well. Some examples were for our operations, we switched to what's called the AWARE program that eliminated dust-guided collection of recycling and waste, take it to centralized location. We also used their protocol to do an RFP for composting services, that we had more broad composting services for the campus. But you can see the trend lines between all this is the data and collection and utilization analysis of data. So I'm going to turn to Emma, who's going to share a tool that she's developed to help us work on that.
Great, thanks, Maida. I'm going to flip my screen over to our Tableau dashboard that we created. This was really important to us to understand our current baseline, and also, as you can see here, it toggles through multiple years. So we have 5 years worth of fiscal year information. This also has a large assumption with the high level of dumpster service that we have on campus, and having to convert that using the EPA standards from volume to weight, and having a blanket fullness percentage for the whole campus. So we're further looking into the actual fullness and determining if we should use a sensor system or have a little more eyesight over those pieces. But we really wanted to see the trends over time, over years. And then we also wanted to establish what was happening over time throughout the academic year to be able to focus our attention to different programs. So we also included information on those generator groups that Maida mentioned, including our Greek sector, housing, landscaping, athletics. And this outer rung also gives information on the type of materials that we see so that we can get more into our source separated system and showcase the impact that that is having. And we're also looking towards the future to include additional waste audits so that we can understand what is making up that landfill rung. So go back to our slides. And just some additional insights that we have pulled from this, looking at our operations and stream complexities. We unfortunately had some changes in our landscape operations that no longer are conducting on-site landscape waste management, and looking towards fixing that problem because it's one stream and a relatively easy to understand material flow, rather than things like our football games where we have a wide range of vendors, concessions, and the different packaging across that, as well as the training and education component between 45 staff members or 55,000 football fans. A big key here that also came through during our materials management conservation plan was our invoicing and data collection. This has been a really great tool and exercise, but it's obviously happening while the operations of the campus are still functioning. And so taking the time to really dedicate to gathering this data has been really important, but has taken us about 1.5 to 2 years to fine tune. So if you do decide to do this, don't be discouraged by the amount of effort that it will take. It's really worthwhile and also opened us up to improving our invoices so that we could have them sorted by the generators and have more people on campus understand where those accounts are located than just it falling in this one office. We also found some insights using our enrollment and staff populations on daily pounds per capita, and then obviously the trend lines you saw over time. We have very high peaks, especially in housing in August and May for the move in and move out on campus, as well as the general classroom buildings during those times as the ramp up and closure of the campus are happening in those months, and also wanting to focus on looking at those times of year to be able to best allocate our resources and make the real impact that we need to see. So I know that's pretty quick, but we are excited to hear from the other panelists. Feel free to reach out to us if you have questions beyond what the Q&A can provide. So thanks so much.
Awesome, thank you, Emma and Maida. And if I wasn't clear, we're going to hold all the questions to the end of the panel, but keep putting them in the Q&A box as they come to you. So we're going to turn next to Sue.
Great, thank you. That was awesome. I'm really impressed with the tools that you have. All right. So today I'm going to be talking to you about how we at SUNY ESF are measuring and striving for campus circularity and zero waste using TRU's pre-certification tool. I am our Director of Sustainable Operations, and my role is a little bit different in that I happen to directly supervise and advocate for a large portion of our operations staff, which of course on some days takes a lovely amount of time. They're all wonderful people, but whenever you have a large staff, there are a lot of responsibilities that come with that. But the really nice thing is that we've built this program together from the ground floor. I wasn't coming in as kind of an outside department asking for their time. Midway or at the end of a process, we really and truly built everything you see here as a group. And that's something I'm happy to talk more about in the Q&A. So to ground us in SUNY ESF, we are one of 64 state campuses in New York State. We're located in Syracuse, New York. Our main campus that I'll be talking about today is only, we have 9 buildings. So we're a perfect case study to do a true pre-certification portfolio for our entire campus. But by land area, we're one of the largest in the state of New York with 25,000 acres, all of our programs are focused on the environment, and that does give us a bit of an advantage in terms of our students' interests and my ability to kind of hide behind the students and say, they want us to go zero waste. I guess I need a little bit more funding and more staff to make that happen. And if anyone is interested in checking out some of our sustainability accomplishments, we are the only SUNY school in one of 10 or 11 institutions that have achieved the STARS Platinum ranking. And that's a voluntary self-reporting sustainability framework. So if you do Google ASHE STARS and look at our report, you'll see a lot more information about what we do as a campus there. So we kind of have dual zero waste and circularity goals. The more traditional and often heard is the 90% diversion goal for 90% compost and recycling as our goal. But of course, materials reduction and waste prevention is really, really what we're after here. So we have another goal, which is much more important in my mind. Whenever I present to campus, I say there's validity and value in recycling and compost, but to me, it's just okay. We're really here to strive for reuse and reduction. And that is a 90% reduction in material sent to landfill and incineration. So we have both there. To blitz through a few of the programs and some of the progress we've made, if anyone has more questions, we can dig into this in greater depth. We instituted a formalized campus-wide composting system 3 years ago. We standardized our bins in offices and hallways, which now I'm happy we did because that's part of true pre-certification. We have reusable containers, plastic-free vending machines. We've got really creative grants to offer free reusable menstrual cups and pads to campus. We do waste audits. We're working with our dorm for a move-out program. We're fighting to really modernize the state surplus property system, which is very antiquated and makes it very difficult to donate low-value items such as furniture. And that's heavy material, it's usable material. And so we're really working to find a way to keep that out of landfill and incineration and cycling back through our community. I'll talk more about the other things later, but of course, true pre-certification. So here, this program is a lot. Thanks, sorry. Sorry, someone just came in my office. That happens sometimes. So true pre-certification is the right step for us right now because we haven't achieved the 90% diversion that is our goal that you need for full certification. And you'll see on this slide and next, the items that you do need for pre-certification. And I've called a few of them out on the side as the ones that I'm gonna highlight a little bit today. So at first, we need to have a college-wide, so right now a Syracuse campus focus on a zero waste policy. And luckily we can build off of 2 policies that we already have. It's our green purchasing and break free from plastics pledge, which disallows the use of state funds to purchase a lot of single-use plastics on campus. And also SUNY as a system, if I'm remembering correctly, has a goal of diverting 50% of our construction and demolition material. At ESF, we want to do 90. It's really hard to do that now because local markets, but we're going to build off these 2 policies because now I realize, why don't we have a zero waste policy? Why don't we have this holistic component tying all of it together? So now through true pre-certification, that's something we have to do. And I'm just really glad we have to do that as part of the process because it just makes sense. Another one I'll call out, and Celeste sent me this. This is a game changer. The true tracking template for trash, recycling, compost, and so many material streams. I'm going to show you that in just a few moments, but that has revolutionized how I track all of our material streams across campus. Before I had this tracking template as part of the program, I was just using kind of a homegrown Sue-made Excel file that made really good sense to me. But if anyone else was in there, it was definitely complex and confusing. And the true tracking template will just be something that'll be very easy and that anyone on campus will be able to understand. We also, as I mentioned, luckily, we have right-sized our containers and our service levels, and we've standardized bins across campus. So through this process of adding compost and standardizing our bins, we were able to drop our trash collection from 5 days a week down to 2 during the semester. And that has really saved us a tremendous amount of money, which we could then reinvest. And also with waste audits, our students complete them every single month during the academic year. And starting this fall, we're hoping to do it 3 times a year with our operations staff. So we really do have a good sense of what's needed. So you can see these are the requirements of the true pre-certification. I'm sure Celeste can answer a lot of these questions more than I can, but I'll take you should shift your eyes to the right column, because some of them you have to meet all the requirements, and some of them the requirements are reduced from pre-certification versus full certification. And so this is a treat for you all. Part of true pre-certification pertains to upstream things such as purchasing. And if folks are interested, I can share this link in the chat. Our incredible sustainability outreach and engagement coordinator, Delaney Demrow, created this resource. She deserves 98% of all the credit and the work that was put into this. Basically, we have state mandated green purchasing requirements that we took to the next level. And we understand that everyone on campus is overburdened with the amount of work that they have. So we can't really be asking folks to add more to their day to achieve buy-in for our sustainability targets. So we have direct live links to products that meet third-party green specifications as well as state mandates. So if anyone's interested in that, that's on our website, and I can share the link. In the interest of time, I'm going to blitz really quickly through this tracking template. I'm happy to go into greater depth. But as you can see, so this is our 2021 tracking data. You can see we can break it down by material stream, mixed, metal, shredded. I have month by month numbers. I can put if it's actual weight or estimated weight. I can write notes to myself showing where we got this weight. If it was an estimation, how did we do that? And I can go campus by campus because I have centralized, that's such a good point, Emma, about centralizing invoicing and contracts with one person. It is a hugely heavy lift, but yes, so worth it. So they all run through me now, and I can aggregate all this data in one tab. So I'll stop here, but if anyone wants to dig into this more, again, this is something I got from True, and I think it's the best thing I've come across in my 3 years working here at ESF. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue. That purchasing guide looks amazing. So I'm sure you're going to get a lot of interest in that. Next, we're going to go to Danner.
Sorry, y'all. I'm just trying to find my slideshow, so just give me one moment. Hi, everyone. My name is Danner Dowd Martin. I am obviously not the best at tech. Let's see here. We did it okay here for a minute. Okay. All right. My name is Danner Dowd Martin. I am at the Haas School of Business, which is the business school at UC Berkeley. I am specifically going to talk about just one building today, which is Chew Hall. It is one of 4 buildings at the Haas School of Business, and it was opened in 2017. And so we started off knowing that we wanted to do the True certification before we even opened the building. The building is, it has classrooms, event spaces, group study rooms, a cafe, and there are no office spaces. And so what's interesting about that is that it the traffic is always changing. It's always new students coming in and out, new faculty, guests, and so forth. And so we have to really think about how we're educating folks. This building was designed for lead well, and we added True on the back end of it. And so what was really interesting about that is how we were able to get the True certification after the fact. As we all have been hearing, you know, there's a ton of different credits that you need to accomplish. And so when we opened the building, one of the things that really pushed us was that we had a goal back before 2020 that we needed to achieve zero waste by 2020 at the whole university level. At this point in 2022, we are now saying that we have a zero waste goal of 90%, and we're still trying to accomplish that. The Chew Hall building they wanted us to do True certification as a blueprint for the rest of campus, and the True certification really helped us to motivate our stakeholders to achieve the platinum certification. And another thing that really motivated us was Berkeley Haas's actual defining leadership principles. We were really able to use these DLPs, as we call them, to really push our senior leadership, our students, and our staff, specifically around the beyond yourself. These are actually in our buildings and on our courtyard. So we were able to really focus on those DLPs to push folks. And we did this all with a multidisciplinary team. I actually was a volunteer as a staff person. And so we hired some graduate students who came in and helped us achieve this goal, which I think if we were doing this again, I would love to actually have hired folks, because it took 2 good years of going through the process and a lot of hard work, as you all are talking about. And we still use Chu Hall as a living laboratory. We've made a ton of mistakes. One of the things that is really different about Chu Hall is that we have no landfill bins in the building. So we open the building with no landfill bins. There's only compost recycling, and we have really pushed our stakeholders to have a pack in, pack out mentality. So if you bring in landfill, we ask you to pack it out. We need to make sure that everything in the building can be recycled or composted. So as you can imagine, with events and cafe, that's tricky. We've really had to push our senior leadership to come on board. So this is actually our dean who's doing waste audits with us. And we've gotten our folks really used to seeing these waste audits, but we have definitely not got to the place, Sue, where you're doing them, monthly. We need to actually step up in that sense. But the cafe is obviously a huge partner in this. And so we had to make sure that there were no items in the cafe that could be put into landfill. So that meant there's no chip bags, there's no bars, there's no no snack wrappers. And so we've really had to push them to think outside the box. We've done snacks in bulk, kind of like if you go to Whole Foods or something. And we've had to really work with our cafe to make sure that we are thinking through this no landfill options, which is actually really exciting and also can be somewhat difficult at times. In terms of events, as we all know, there's all kinds of events happening on campus, and they range from student events to staff and faculty events. We've tried to put together a really comprehensive zero waste policy, and we've tried to put together items that folks might want to use, like balloons, for different events, and make sure that we had reusable options. So we have a whole decor option for our students and our staff that folks can utilize. Education, as we know, is a huge part of all of this, and we've had to really think through how do we tap into the folks that we already have who are on campus. And so we've created VPs of Sustainability in each one of our degree programs, and we really utilize them to help us spread the message around packing in and packing out, and why zero waste is so important, and what and how the business school and students can learn from what we're doing here. Community engagement, again, really important. We do a lot of free cycles, clothing swaps, vintage swag sales, where we try and get rid of all the boxes of old merchandise that we have around the office, and get it back out of the closets and into the world around us. And we've also really tried to figure out how to eliminate single-use plastics and single-use items. So we have a battery program here at Haas where students, faculty, and staff are able to check out rechargeable batteries. They can use them on campus, or they can take them home. And we're working with a new student startup that's trying to bring reusable containers to all of our events. And so we're getting away from the compostables to really dig into a true zero waste platform. That's it. That was fast, but if anybody has any questions, I look forward to to talking more about it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Danner. That was really great. So we will finish up our panel with Celeste.
Great. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here. I am really excited to hear all these great updates from these fantastic colleges and universities, and we've been planning this event for a while, so it's really exciting to have it be happening right now. Can everyone see my screen okay? Yes, fantastic. All right, so I'm going to be talking about True. For those of you that aren't super familiar, I just wanted to give a quick overview of our organization. True is part of the U.S. Green Building Council, which some of you might be familiar with. We're most well known for the work that we've done on the LEED certification program as the developers and administrators. We are a global nonprofit. And in addition to LEED, we have a number of other certifications that deal with different facets of sustainability. Today, of course, we're focusing on waste. And I will just make note that for waste, the USGBC does have two other programs that address that. LEED and ARC are both waste tracking platforms, but True is the only program that really is a zero waste goal oriented program. So that's kind of the difference there, and happy to talk about any of these synergies a little bit later in the presentation as well. So when we think about zero waste, we really start with the idea of the circular economy, and we at True really have tried to focus the entire program, as hopefully you've heard a little bit in today's presentations, of really moving from that linear economy to the circular economy and embedding that in every aspect of the certification and with the partners that we work with, both as clients and both other nonprofits and so forth. I'll just touch briefly on this what is zero waste slide, because I think it's a really interesting question to ask. This is something that I think is a phrase that a lot of people are familiar with at this point, but it means different things to different people. And that's because it's become a bit of a trend that you might see on Instagram, or you see different companies or facilities having, various zero waste goals. But I do think it can be challenging when there isn't a clear directive about what it actually means to achieve zero waste. And this is something, just thinking back on that slide of the USGBC, that we've really done over the years is created standards that go along with different sustainability metrics. So that is really how the LEED certification program was developed, for those of you that have familiarity with that. LEED was something that came out of a lot of discussions happening surrounding green building and energy efficiency, which several decades ago was a big conversation. And I think what we've seen is zero waste has really come up as one of the leading environmental issues. But since there hasn't been a lot of clarity or certification around that program, it's led to some misinformation in the marketplace. And so since the USGBC has been very active in developing these certifications for sustainability issues, we really saw it as a great next step in our mission to implement a program that would deal with exactly that. So in order to develop this certification, we of course looked to a lot of the great work that had already been done by the EPA and also by an organization known as ZWIA, or the Zero Waste International Alliance. And they had developed this zero waste hierarchy of highest and best use. And this may be familiar to some of you, but if not, this is essentially a material life cycle of all the different roles that a material can have throughout its useful life. This, of course, starts at the top with ways to reduce that material usage, to return it, to reuse it, to repair it. The two upper tiers of this triangle address waste avoidance, or prevention of waste from occurring in the first place, and we consider these to be upstream strategies. The bottom two tiers of this triangle are about waste management. And these are things that are more conventionally thought of when we think about diversion, things like recycling and composting and landfilling. For me, when I was in school, I'll date myself a little bit, but we learned the 3 R's, the reduce, reuse, recycle. And I think what we've really seen over the past couple of decades is there has been a huge focus on recycling, and there's been a little bit of enthusiasm and energy lost when it comes to other strategies like reduction and reuse. These are really coming back now, which is exciting. I think there's an increased awareness about how these more waste avoidance practices can have a big impact on the overall diversion. But I think it's really good to look at it as an overall process of how materials can be used and make sure we're including things that count as avoidance rather than just looking at those downstream strategies. So this was really the framework that was used to develop the True certification program. And we'll see that a little bit more in the next couple slides. Just to really hone in on what True is, we are a zero waste certification program that address 3 different types of things. We certify facilities, which we've heard a couple of great examples about today. We also certify events. So that could be like a football game or a conference or something like that. And we also certify construction projects. So that's a nice piggyback to the LEED certification program as well, but really focusing on that goal of zero waste construction. In order to certify, as we've heard, we have a requirement to hit a 90% diversion threshold. That includes diversion from landfill and incineration. The way that we support projects on their pathway to zero waste is that we've developed a framework of different strategies that are part of a zero waste goal. And we've really used that zero waste hierarchy to help support those strategies. And so it's a fully developed roadmap that helps projects, helps campuses on that journey to zero waste. We think of the credits that are in the rating system as those strategies to drive that operational change. Similar to some of our other certifications like LEED, we are a points-based rating system with 4 different certification tiers, certified silver, gold, and platinum, with these different point thresholds aligning up with the different certifications. This is an overview of the categories and points. I won't spend too much time on this, but I do think it's helpful to see how that zero waste hierarchy comes alive. So we've taken those concepts that you saw in the hierarchy, such as redesign, such as reduction, reuse, and we've assigned them into categories that then have these associated points. And as I mentioned on a previous slide, I really like to think of those points as strategies. So when we see in the top left, redesign for 4 points, those are really 4 opportunities to integrate redesign practices into your operations in order to help get you closer to that goal of 90%. So the 2 elements work in tandem. 90% diversion as a requirement is supported by all of the points and strategies in the rating system, hoping that every time you implement a strategy, it's really going to help you get closer and closer to that 90%. One that I'll highlight here because Sue did a great job of talking about it was the zero waste purchasing section on the bottom left. This is actually where we have the most points in the rating system. This is in big part because this is where a lot of that power can be found in upstream choices, such as moving to reusables, but it's also a big place where costs can be accounted for in terms of looking at what those prices are and regaining those costs by implementation. I'll also just make note on the right that we have other categories such as leadership and training and analysis. Those might not deal with the physical materials themselves, but they're an incredibly important part of the longevity of a zero waste plan, and especially in a campus setting, making sure that we have a lot of that training and leadership on board. This is a quick snapshot of an example diversion tracker. I think what Sue shared was great, and so we can maybe refer back to that. But I just like to drive home the point that we really want to include those upstream strategies in the diversion tracker as well. So in addition to having your items such as recycling and composting and then landfill, we want the reduction and the reuse and all of those great upstream strategies to be included in that, because as we know from the zero waste hierarchy, those are the most environmentally potent opportunities for material savings. In terms of eligibility, we do pretty much certify every type of facility. We have a lot of different facilities across the board, everything from stores to, of course, higher education, as we've talked about today, office buildings, hotels and hospitality, a little bit of everything. We heard about this from Sue as well, but I'll just touch on the fact that we do have a pathway to get to zero waste that starts with the idea of pre-certification, which is a great opportunity for those campuses, facilities that might have a goal of getting to zero waste, but maybe aren't quite at that 90%. So this is a way of capturing those initial steps that are needed on that pathway to zero waste, and it might follow up with the full certification. Then for projects that have maybe initially certified at a lower certification tier, such as certified or silver, there's of course the opportunity to jump up to gold or platinum. I'll just highlight that we do have quite a bit of overlap with LEED. So for those facilities that and those campuses that might have LEED certification on the campus, that there is a great connection to different ways with True. We are a global program. We're in, I think, closer to over 30 countries right now. This is actually a little out of date, but we're really excited about the global presence that we have with the program. And then the last thing I'll talk about is our True Advisor, which I think is a great opportunity, especially for higher education. True Advisors are experts in both zero waste and True certification. This is an online, on-demand training program that registrants go through the entire program and learn all about different practices and philosophies of zero waste, and then also get a deep dive into the True program. And then at the end of the training, there is an exam that can be taken. And then if you pass the exam, you receive the True Advisor. And this is great for students. It's great for sort of the green team at schools. We have a lot of schools that put their entire green team of students through this program so that they can learn more about zero waste. It's a nice accolade for those students to come out of university with something on their resume that can show their direct practicing of these different principles. And then the True Advisors are oftentimes the ones that are on the ground in person, really helping to support these certifications to come through. They're helping with the waste audits, as we saw a lot of examples of that today. They're making sure things go in the right bin. And it's just a really great program. It's actually how I got connected with True, and it's been very exciting to see it grow. As you can see, similarly, we're in a lot of different countries. We're coming up on 2,000 True Advisors, and it's certainly something I would encourage you and your students to get involved with. Feel free to reach out, and we do offer both discounts for that. So that is it from me. I'm looking forward to the discussion and answering any questions. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Celeste, and all of our panelists. So we have about 15 minutes for questions. We're going to try and get to as many as we can, and I'll just draw your attention to our panelists can answer questions in the Q&A box. So if you put a question in there, there might be a typed response. So just to start us off, I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about how you came to your waste goal, how you decided it was a 90% reduction or a zero waste goal. Was it from top down or more of a committee process? And then we also had a question about how you determined your baseline years and then your goal years. So whoever wants to jump in with that first.
I can kick it off. So at ESF, I think within like the first month of my job, I pretty much set the zero waste goal. And then the collaborative part is now how do we get there? Because the industry standard really did seem like the 90%. So it made sense to go with that and then add the reduction goals because that's very important to us. And then, yeah, the collaboration has been completely ongoing since then. And our baseline year is 2018. And we chose that because that is really the year preceding all the changes. And even though that year, it's really a volume to weight estimate, so it's not actual weight for our trash collection and recycling collection, I think it still makes sense to do that because it's pre-change. And for us, we actually, for any state institutions out there, we were able to go off state contract to work with a local hauler who was able to provide us with weights because it meant the form, function, and utility of the Green New York specification. So that's a nice trick that you're not just bound to the state contract. You can use sustainability to get around it a little bit.
I can add a little bit for Georgia Tech. I mentioned a little bit at the beginning of the presentation, but we did have a president strategic plan come out that has a sustainability component to it. So we had that timeline, and then we had a committee that looked at different aspects of that. There were 6 committees looking at different parts of the plan. On the sustainability side, that committee came up with a 90% diversion goal. So the timeline was set for us, but then we looked at what would be reasonable and came up with that that goal for the president's initiative.
Great, thank you. All right, we also had a couple of questions about how you're doing waste audits, sort of how you target what buildings you're doing the audits for, how frequently, and if any of you want to speak to that.
I'll jump in there. We have done a lot previously. The pandemic made things a little bit harder, and that was one of the big components that we originally wished for with this materials management plan, and was included in that scope until our consultant wasn't able to travel as much as they thought they would be able to. But last year we started picking it back up in the spring semester. So we've done about 2 since things kind of leveled off with the pandemic, and mainly just focused on 2 academic buildings. One really sprouted from a student group that was interested. They were a public policy group in the public policy building. And then we also did one as a showcase during Earth Day for one of our really large library study classroom buildings that also has a cafe. So that was really impactful for it being such a large building. In terms of conducting the audits, it is a pretty big undertaking. There's a lot of stuff online. The biggest thing is to decide if you're doing it for information or for an education aspect. So some of ours we've done kind of just on the side on our own, and some of them have more been as a display. And those display functions have been a really good conversation starter for students. And also we've created this kind of grid platform where we have all the streams that we provide, and then the same materials going down kind of the y-axis portion, and lining things up to where they match so that people can see what possible contaminants were in those streams. So what amount of landfill was in the plastic stream, what amount of aluminum cans were in the landfill stream, and things like that. But really getting some jumpsuits, a big tarp, and rubber gloves, and you just kind of have to dive into the bags, and especially work closely with custodial to get the bags kind of before they go into a dumpster or a compactor is always much better than having to dig them out of something. We usually try to do about a 24-hour footprint.
Great. Yeah, if anyone else wants to add to that, go ahead.
One tip that I learned too is that, so our environmental health and safety officer walked by one day when we were doing audits, which have been happening at the college for years and years. And they were like, I didn't know this was happening, which, okay. So either way, we had to create a really, really formalized safety plan and get it through the committee. So if you've never done one on your campus before, start with environmental health and safety or an analogous department and make sure that they are on board, because nothing is worse than putting so much effort into something and then having a wrench that you don't anticipate.
Yeah, that's a good tip. All right, so our next question is, how time consuming is the true pre-certification and certification process? Could it be a student project? And then someone else also asked, sort of, what information do you need to gather in order to start the certification process?
I can help answer that. Others might want to chime in too, but what we usually say is that going through the certification, you really want to allow typically about 1 hour per credit. We're a credit-based rating system. And so this is kind of based on guidance that we've gotten from a lot of our consultants that have done the work, that when it comes to actually submitting for documentation, it's usually about an hour per credit. Now, that may or may not include the time that you have to spend sort of like readdressing your purchasing policies and doing an overview of your current operational systems. That might be extra, but that might be something that is already happening, right? As far as the actual certification is concerned and submitting documentation, that's about the range that we account for. And we have seen a lot of students, interns, student groups help support with that documentation. I don't know that that's always necessarily the case, but that is something that we do see regularly happen. I think students and interns and so forth can be a huge help in doing a lot of that documentation tracking. In order to get started with the process, we don't have a ton of requirements. We do have a lot of resources and tools that can help with those beginning processes. We have a planning tool. We have the rating system is available. Everything is publicly available and free on our website. So definitely feel free to check that out. But then for the actual certification, we have an application that needs to be submitted, but that happens a bit later in the process. So I'll just leave that there if others want to chime in. Great, hopefully I answered. Hopefully that aligns with Sue and Danner's experience then.
Dana, do you want to add anything or?
I think we're unique in that we opened a building with True in mind. And so we didn't have a baseline. We didn't do pre-certification. And so maybe that was beneficial, and it was also very difficult and took a lot of time. So I think what's nice about it is you can start behavior change right away. And so that was really, especially when we eliminated landfill bins from your option, that really was beneficial to us to be able to say, this is how it's going to be from the start, and y'all need to get used to it, and we'll go from there.
That makes sense.
So amazing.
For Emma and Mina, we got a bunch of questions about your per capita waste rate. If you could just talk very briefly about how you calculate that, that would be great.
Sure. The biggest calculation of it is mainly just trying to find the information across campus. So we have two groups that report on this. It's our Institute Research and Planning, and then our Enterprise Data Management. So one tracks more of the staff and the other more of the enrollment. And it's, you know, possibly not the perfect number, but the way we try to simplify it is we have a lot of online students. So we filtered the data to just show our Atlanta campus information. And then that took out anyone that was studying abroad or studying online only. And then we also have that other department that's tracking our staff and faculty. And that also includes a lot of our research group that is present on campus. So they are people that are there every single day. So they're also included in that number, and that matches our STARS reporting. But STARS has their own function where they're weighting that. The number included in this is not weighted. And so we had that for 2 years worth of information. So that is how we got it. Each year it's about 30,000 people. And the way we're mostly looking at it, you know, we did consider the EPA estimate. However, we know there are some people that, you know, they don't live full time on campus. They just come to work or they come to study and they live off campus. The biggest reason we're tracking that is because our enrollment has been increasing. And so we wanted to see if the enrollment increases were causing waste to increase or how that was going across the board. So we have seen about a 9% increase in our enrollment. You know, we had hit a lull during the pandemic and it's gone back up pretty swiftly, but we're not seeing a 9% increase both for landfill and overall for all categories. So overall, we are not producing as much waste as much as the campus is growing. So that was a really interesting thing to take away.
Thank you. All right. Well, I am sorry we don't have the time for any more questions because I feel like we could keep talking about this for like a whole nother hour. But I'm just going to briefly. Ooh, sorry. I don't know why. Did that work? I don't know. Just going to talk a little bit about the upcoming Kirk events. I don't know why my screen share is not working. It says my screen share is paused. Today's webinar was the 4th in our 2022 webinar series. Our next one is coming up on October 20th with the topic of successful free and surplus stores. So that should be another really interesting conversation, and registration information will be coming out about that in the next couple of weeks. We are also hoping you'll join us for our annual Kirk workshop, which will be November 10th from 1 to 4 p.m. as part of the National Recycling Coalition's 2-day conference. Our theme this year is Partnerships for People and Planet. Registration for the half-day workshop is $30 and scholarships are available. An email went out today about that to all of our regular listserv members, and it should also be in the chat now. Yep, I see that it's there if you are interested in registering, and more information about that will be coming out soon. So one last time, join me in thanking Emma, Maida, Sue, Danner, and Celeste for their information today. And just as a reminder, the presentation and slides and recording will be available on our website. So if you're wanting to follow up with any of the presenters, you can do that by finding their slides on the website. So we hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks, everyone.